Hey guys, my name is Sandra. I read some books this month that I would like to tell you about, so let's just get into it. The first book I read is called A Certain Hunger by Chelsea G. Summers. Food critic Dorothy Daniels loves what she does. Discerning, meticulous, and very, very smart. Dorothy's clear mastery of the culinary arts make it likely that she could, on any given night, whip up a more inspired dish than any one of the chefs she writes about. Dorothy loves sex as much as she loves food, and while she has struggled to find a long-term partner that can keep up with her, she makes the best of her single life, frequently traveling from Manhattan to Italy for a taste of both. But there is something within Dorothy that's different from everyone else, and having suppressed it long enough, she starts to embrace what makes Dorothy uniquely, terrifyingly herself. Recounting her life from a seemingly idyllic farm-to-table childhood, the heights of her career, to the moment she plunges an ice pick into a man's neck on Fire Island, Dorothy Daniels shows us what happens when a woman finally embraces her superiority. Satire of early foodism, a critique of how gender is defined, and a showcase of virtuoso storytelling. Chelsea G. Summers' A Certain Hunger introduces us to the food world's most charming psychopath and an exciting new voice in fiction. My thoughts are that the main character of this sarcastic and dryly humorous debut novel is a promiscuous, psychopathic food critic and serial murderer whose MO is cannibalism. Premenopausal and retelling her story from prison, this satirical tale takes us to almost every corner of the world where this food critic sexes her way up and down the streets of the big cities, writing about gourmet food with a dreamy budget and all the free time in the world. Each chapter is cleverly titled after a gourmet food or dish and describes the horrific manner in which she murders each victim to obtain her various ingredients. As much as I loved this book, I have to say I often found myself tripping over and through paragraphs because the author really enjoyed using hyphenated adjectives, and she uses them in abundance. The entire book reads like a roller coaster ride from start to finish, but a lot of times I asked myself how much longer this was going to drag on, and it gave me really strong feminist vibes. I mean, this is a woman who literally enjoys and then eats her lovers, past and present, as ingredients in gourmet dishes. The next book I read was called Bog Queen by Anna North. And here's the back cover. When a body is found in a bog in northwest England, Agnes, an American forensic anthropologist, is called to investigate. But this body is not like any she's ever seen. Though its bones prove it was buried more than 2,000 years ago, it's almost completely preserved. Soon Agnes is drawn into a mystery from the distant past, called to understand and avenge the death of an Iron Age woman more like her than she knows. Along the way, she must contend with peat cutters who want to profit from the bog and activists who demand that the land be left undisturbed. Then there's the moss itself, a complex repository of artifacts and remains, with its own dark stories to tell. As Agnes faces the deep history of what she has unearthed, she's also forced to question what she thought she knew about her talent, her self-reliance, and her place in the world. Flashing between the uncertainty of post-Brexit England and the Druidic order of Celtic Europe at the dawn of the Roman era, Bog Queen brims with contemporary urgency and ancient wisdom as it connects across time to gifted, far-sighted young women learning to harness their strange strengths in a landscape more mysterious and complex than either can imagine. The book seemed hurried, but otherwise the premise was interesting. Agnes is a forensic anthropologist who is called in to take on an intriguing case. They meant to find an old murder victim, and instead they find a body from the Iron Ages preserved in the bog. And so from past to future and future to past, two stories are told, We have Agnes's story as she tries to uncover more about this bog corpse while also dealing with environmentalist protesters who happen to disagree with the dig. And then we've got this ancient druid who, is trying to establish her place in the world as well, by making a name for herself. I wish more effort had gone into the book because, like I said, the premise was attention grabbing, but it's kind of like she only went into enough detail to make it pertinent to the story when I, as a reader, wanted her to delve deeper into the topic of the bog and why it's so culturally significant for people during the Iron Age and how it preserves bodies the way it does, things like that. Next book I read was called Glimpses of Paradise by James Scott Bell. The back of the story, or the back cover, reads, two high school kids in a small town, Nebraska have their dreams. Z, a minister's daughter, wants to be a movie star. Doyle, the son of a wealthy lawyer, expects to follow in his father's footsteps and practice law. But World War I explodes and changes everyone forever. When Doyle ends up on the battlefields of France, though he performs ably, he comes home disillusioned. Rejecting his parents' pleas to return to school, he finds himself in Los Angeles on the bottom rung of society. Z Miller is also in LA, having run away from her father and the religion of her youth, but a stunning string of events resulting in a charge of murder will see their lives intersecting again in a way that may shatter them both. This story takes place in the late 1910s and early 1920s, and is told from two different viewpoints of Doyle and Z, a couple of small-town Nebraskan friends who come from different walks of life and have very different dreams. Doyle comes from a family with a lawyer father who's pushing him into a law career, and Z comes from a religiously fanatical home where she's a victim of the times and everything is a sin. And Doyle wants to marry Z and settle down and have a family and, live this normal humdrum life. But Z is vivacious and gifted and strikingly gorgeous and wants to pursue a dream life out in California being a movie star. She doesn't want to settle down and, in fact, seems to have some sort of wisdom about the relationship that he isn't privy to. Like they're both on completely different paths, and he wouldn't actually be happy with her if he took off his rose-colored glasses. So it's like from here, life does take them into two different directions, because Doyle gets enlisted in World War I, and Z makes it to Hollywood after one hurdle after another. Both characters, however, endure their own personal hells, and Z especially realizes that she is not the person she thought she was. She's honestly kind of ashamed of the person she's become and of the things she's willing to do to make it big, but not so ashamed that these things are completely off the table. It's appalling how lifeless and hollow she and Doyle both become throughout the book, even for different reasons. Like, Doyle is dealing with this burdensome guilt he's shouldered since the war that brings him to rock bottom and threatens to snuff out his life, and Z is a shell of who she once was. The ending is both happy and tragic because Doyle finds redemption in the least likely of places, but Z refuses to stop while she's ahead and insists on damning her own soul, even if at the very end she also finds some semblance of redemption. Just what an amazing read, because I wanted to stay up for days reading this because I had such a hard time putting it down. It's definitely a 10 out of 10. Next book I read is called The Sea is Salt and So Am I by Cassandra Hart. The back of the book is West Finch is one hurricane away from falling into the sea. Yet 16-year-old Harlow Prout is determined to save her small Maine hometown. If only she could stop getting in her own way and find anyone willing to help. But her best friend Ellis McQueen fixes problems by running away from them, including his broken relationship with his own twin brother Tommy. And Tommy's depression has hit a new low, so he's not up for fixing anything. In the wake of the town's latest devastating storm, Tommy goes out for a swim that he doesn't intend to survive. It's his unexpected return that sets into motion a sea change between these three teams. One that tests old loyalties, sparks new romance, and uncovers painful secrets. And nothing stays secret in West Finch for long. Exquisitely honest and shimmering with emotion, The Sea is Salt and So Am I is a captivating multi-POV story that probes the depths of what it means to love and trust both ourselves and others. I loved this book. The characters are so alive. They're not mind-bogglingly beautiful with like zero flaws, and they're just average everyday teens in a weird sort of like love triangle that's doomed to fail from the get-go. In the meantime, they live in this small coastal town in Maine that is essentially disappearing into the sea, and so they all have their individual ideas about what they want to do once they've escaped this small town and its catastrophic decline. I loved the author's style, her way with words, really just painted vivid pictures, and so it was like watching a movie reel. This was also the author's debut novel, so I'm really excited to see what else she comes out with. The next book I read was called The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. The back cover reads, Patricia Campbell's life has never felt smaller. Her husband is a workaholic, her teenage kids have their own lives, her senile mother-in-law needs constant care, and she's always a step behind on her endless to-do list. The only thing keeping her sane is her book club, a close-knit group of Charleston women united by their love of true crime. At these meetings, they're as likely to talk about the Manson family as they are about their own families. One evening after book club, Patricia is viciously attacked by an elderly neighbor, bringing the neighbor's handsome nephew, James Harris, into her life. James is well-traveled and well-read, and he makes Patricia feel things that she hasn't felt in years. But when children on the other side of town go missing, their deaths written off by local police, Patricia has reason to believe James Harris is more of a Bundy than a Brad Pitt. The real problem is that James is a monster of a different kind, and Patricia has already invited him in. Little by little, James will insinuate himself into Patricia's life and try to take everything she took for granted, including the book club. But she won't surrender without a fight in this blood-soaked tale of neighborly kindness gone wrong. This book was an interesting take on the classic vampire, and Hendrix is very skilled at painting a picture of absolute horror and grotesqueness. The author clearly also tried to make a statement about race relations and white privilege, in that the book club consists of these old wealthy white women whose husbands do all the work while they stay at home, and tend to the house and the children, and they have their book club to keep them busy in between everything else. And then on the other side of the tracks are the black population that suffers the most from poverty and crime. And this dichotomy exists all throughout the book. Hendrix took the traditional vampire and made it into something more sensual, if that was even possible, because for some reason he does not feed from the neck but from the thigh, I guess to keep from being detected. So I think what I enjoyed most about this book is that it kind of had a Golden Girls feel to it. The last book I read this month was called The Unmothers by Leslie J. Anderson, and here's the back cover. Marshall is still trying to put the pieces together after the death of her husband. After she's involved in a terrible accident, Our editor sends her to the small backwoods town of Rayford to investigate a clearly ridiculous rumor that a horse has given birth to a healthy human baby boy. You guys remember those tabloids? I do. When Marshall arrives in Rayford, she finds an insular town that is kinder to the horses they're famous for breeding than to their own people. But when two horribly mangled bodies are discovered in a field, one a horse and one a human, she realizes that there might be a real story here. As she's pulled deeper into the town and its guarded people, her sense of reality is tipped on its head. Is she losing her grip? Or is this impossible story the key to a dark secret that's haunted the women of Rayford for generations? Unbearably tense and utterly gripping, this atmospheric tale of female rage, bodily autonomy, and generational trauma hails the arrival of a master storyteller. I can't talk. The book started off intriguingly enough. Obviously, when a book begins with a reporter on her way to investigate a tabloid title that goes, "Horse gives birth to healthy baby boy," you're going to want to know what does become of that. I liked the folksy feel and aspect of the book, especially of the superstitions and various practices that were described in the book. But I have to say, for me, it kind of fizzled out pretty quickly. I rated this a 3 out of 5 on Amazon because while it was a good read and was most certainly original, it was still also a very predictable and cliche trope. And I feel like there was a ton of buildup just for it to really not amount to much. Our main character is a grieving widow who also lost a child. And so her employer sends her out to the boonies to get the scoop on a strange interspecies romance. But instead, she stumbles into an entirely different mystery involving strangely mutilated corpses and ghostly herds of horses. The beast that terrorizes this small town is more a tulpa, like a giant black monster created and sustained by the hatred and anger of the community's women population. Or maybe, as it hints in the text, it's the culmination of many generations of trauma and anger and hatred and rage and pain. This book also gave me feminism vibes because of its visceral views on mothering and childbirth, and the main character's inner monologue regarding men in general. I would certainly recommend this book. I think it's worthy of at least one read through, though it didn't particularly interest me enough for a second read. There, guys, that's it, and that's all the books I read this month. I hope that there's something in this list that you like, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.